Good evening. It is Tuesday night. It's cheese night, and we have Stephen and George Fletcher of the famous Berkswell. The famous Berkswell. Good afternoon, guys.
Right. Hello.
How are you doing? How is your year going so far?
Better than last one. Yeah. You can use any metaphor you want, roller coaster or whatever. It's just been crazy, really. Emotions from one extreme to the other, income from one extreme to the other. It's just been crazy.
A lot of learning curves.
Huge. Yeah.
Right,
we have learned massive. I think we've learned more about our business in the last 12 months than we had in the last 30 years, almost, really.
Okay, that wasn't the answer I was expecting. All right, let's go down to before. Let's go before COVID, before you had the Magimix got hold of your business, and date back. So you've been making cheese since, if I've got this right, 1989. Is that right?
Yeah, we started milking sheep in the January of 1989. And we started making cheese in the autumn of 1989.
I mean, that puts you right at the top of the sheep's milk experience inside the UK. There is very little precedent for sheep's milk cheeses in this country.
Yeah, we've worked down hard. I mean, the Berkswell now isn't the same cheese we started out with. It's evolved most definitely, and it's taken a long time. And if I think back now, the Berkswell that we were making, say, even in the early 90s, is not the same cheese as it is now. We've worked at it, and we've had some ups and downs. We've had some problems with it. It went off the rails for a bit, and we've got it back again. And you never stop learning, do you? It's, as they say with cheese, it's a new vintage every day, and that's, I think, puts it in a nutshell, really.
Yeah, it is a new vintage every day, and it's frustrating. I mean, ewe's milk or sheep's milk is almost the most difficult in the sense that it's got some unusual solid ratios, and it's an animal you cannot pull out a season. It needs to, the herd lambs when it lambs. It's not you can't spread it through the year.
Well, we do try to do that, to be fair. For the last quite a long time, 20 years, we've been lambing we had an autumn lambing flock, so we have actually produced milk all year round. But they're very challenging to manage. We're swimming against the tide, really, because sheep being short day breeders, we're lambing them as the days are getting shorter, and we try to milk them as the days are getting shorter. But
it's challenging, but it's also interesting. Although we do milk all year round, most of the sheep lie in the spring, and the milk can change day to day when they're turned out and what the grass is doing throughout the summer. So it's a good challenge to have to manage that, but a really, really interesting challenge, because the cheese is never the same each day.
It varies through the seasons as well. I mean, we make some of our best cheese in the autumn. Generally speaking, if we want to enter a competition, we'll try and pick an autumn cheese.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, let's start with you. So you started making cheese with 35 ewes back in 1989. Why did you do that?
Why did we start making cheese?
Yeah.
Well, it was never our intention to make cheese. I mean, when we started as you say, in 89, the health food thing was really getting going. There wasn't really a food culture existing then like there is now.
No.
I mean, there weren't the TV chefs that there are now. There certainly weren't the cooking programs on the TV, etc. And we were tapping in. We thought we'd tap into the rapid rise in health food, interest in health foods, and sheep's milk was part of that. But the demand was nowhere near big enough. And then one of the local farm shops that we were supplying milk to, the lady came to us one day and said, "Look, my goat's milk cheese maker is packing up. She's retiring. Would you consider making some cheese for us?" And we thought, well, yeah, we'll give it a go. We hadn't made any cheese, but cheese had been made at the farm in the old Warwickshire style many generations ago. My grandfather was alive then, and he couldn't remember his mother making cheese, so it goes back quite a way. But
that's quite a long time backwards.
Yeah, but there's an upstairs southwesterly facing bedroom which we know was used as a cheese maturation room. The original lamb floorboards are very badly eroded. which from the contact of the whey coming from the cheese. And then we uncovered one of the doorways into that room, and lo and behold, we didn't know this, but until we uncovered it, we just thought it was a boarded up doorway, but the door was still in that doorway, and it got the words cheese room painted across it. So that was an amazing discovery. Sadly, we've never been able to find any recipes tucked away under the floorboards. I mean, the floor's been replaced now, but it was. And then the farm kitchen that we use now was originally the farm dairy. It had stone thralls around the outside, around the inside of the walls, I should say. And then apparently, and there's also a bacon smoker. The chimney. Anybody who's seen a picture of Ram Hall is one big chimney stack in the middle, but inside that there are 6 flues, and one of those is a bacon smoker, well, a meat smoker.
Oh, right.
So they may have smoked cheese in there. We don't know, and there is no to anybody's knowledge. There's no written history to the farm. Sorry,
but you're talking about a farm that would have done a little bit of everything, aren't you? I mean, it would have made cheese, made butter, smoked hams, the whole thing.
Yeah. I mean, one of the rooms that we use like a daily sitting room where they tell you and whatnot that was the butchery. There's a big inglenook fireplace there, and on the one side it's badly worn away where they used to sharpen the knives on the sandstone fireplace. And it's also quarry tile floor which slopes to the corner. There used to be a hole in the corner where they'd wash the blood out at the end of the day's work. There's a dairy, there's a brewery. There's a little extension on the end of the house built not long after the house was completed. They think that was a brewery. That's also got a bread oven in it. And then there's a malt drying pit down the side of the chimney as well.
A what?
A malt drying pit.
What's a malt drying pit?
A pit where you dry malt. Malt and hops possibly for drying both of them for beer making.
Okay.
For the brewery.
I'm just bringing up a picture of Ram Hall. It's a beautiful building, isn't it?
Yeah, it's
and as you say, it's got this huge stack and the of chimneys in the middle. It's almost like an industrial stack, except in a very beautiful.
But they draw. There's 6 flues within that stack, and the fireplaces downstairs are all spread out. If you took the house away from the chimney, it would be quite a structure, I think. It's massive at the ground level, and then it's. Sorry, go on.
So I mean, what you're describing is not a house, but a factory.
I think it would have been an absolute hive of activity when it was really buzzing. Yeah.
So it would have been the cheese making, the beer making, the butchery. Everything was going on in that house. But you were at that time you were simply farming. Not farming is simple or anything, but you weren't in production of beer, of butchery, of cheese at that time. You were the traditional method of the 20th century, which was grow animals, sell animals.
Yes, yeah, we were milking cows. That was the primary enterprise on the farm. And when I came home from college, for example, we were milking dairy cows. And then the milk quota situation wasn't particularly good for us. We looked around at something different to an alternative source of income.
But it's quite interesting in recent, especially in the last couple of years, we're sort of starting to go back to, not to the same extent, we're not going to have a brewery and things, but going back to,
never say never.
Yeah, true. But we're going back to that sort of lots of small enterprises. Like we've got pigs on the farm now to feed the whey to, and we're sort of growing more sort of traditional. We're going into hopefully heritage grains, and it's just sort of getting out of the sort of commodity agriculture and putting it all together, really.
Yeah, it's not a particularly big farm, and so we're able to, dovetail these alternative enterprises in without too much difficulty.
How many acres do you farm?
It's about 360 there or thereabouts. We've just lost some to HS2 actually, so it's a bit less than that now.
Oh, someone's driven a train through the middle of your plans then?
Yeah. We could have done without it, but there you go.
That was good bollocks at that point, or is that rude on TV?
Pardon, say again, sorry?
Are you allowed to say bollocks at that point? I mean, I'm assuming
yeah, whatever you like. Yeah. I mean, let's not go there. Let's enjoy ourselves.
All right, subject up. Okay, so we're back to our 35 sheep, which you are now milking because somebody wants you to give it a go, and you, partly because obviously your house and your family have got a history of, you know, turning your hand to it, turn your hand to milking sheep, and try to ride into this demand on the health side, not realizing you are one of the very early adopters of the British cheese renaissance. And people are going to be turning your way pretty soon. I mean, the 90s was a time when the cheesemakers really began to re-emerge in the country.
Yeah, I think the biggest leg up we had really was we were getting going at the same time as the British Cheese Awards were formed, and Juliet Harbour was the driving force behind that, and we were lucky enough to win some awards there. And I think the publicity side of that, the whole British Cheese Awards, was fantastic, because Juliet was promoting it, and she was putting the award winners in front of the press. We were appearing in Sunday supplement, the broadsheet Sunday supplements. We were appearing in BBC Good Food magazine, Country Life, and all, on the back of the British Cheese Awards. We would never have gained access to that sort of publicity without that. And also, I think at the same time, being members of the Specialist Cheesemakers Association, because they were also getting going. And it was all about meeting. It was giving the maker the opportunity to meet the trade. The British Cheese Awards at that time were a massive help to us. Yeah, most definitely.
I mean, I've got in my notes here that you've won 11 gold medals at the British Cheese Awards. I mean, that's a monstrous result.
Yeah, I think it's something like that, 11 or 12. Yeah, we were. Yeah, we've been lucky. I mean, we've.
Excuse me, I'm not swearing at you. Never put down to luck what you can claim for yourself. I found that being honest is not a good plan.
Okay, well, the doors are quite small in this house, so I have to get my head through them as it is. But I think, I think also we were in the right place at the right time. I mean, we were when specialist cheese making really was, because the ball started to roll, and we were there at the beginning. I think we were very lucky for that. And I have to give also, a lot of credit to the guys at Neal's Yard Dairy, Fine Cheese Company, Paxton and Whitfield, and whatnot. They've been tremendously supportive over the years, and to be able to supply them is a real privilege. And it's a real relationship we have with some of our customers, and it brings a lot of pleasure as well. I've often said that you go to a gathering of small scale artisan cheesemakers, everybody's so nice. Everybody's so nice, and it's a real sharing of ideas. You have a chat. You can unload onto people, and they'll unload onto you. And it really is. It's a fantastic little industry, and we really are privileged to be part of it.
I would totally agree. You get all these burly farmers like yourselves knocking around, getting really nerdish about bacterial counts and stuff like that.
Yeah, we were saying not so long ago that we've almost moved now from farmers who make cheese, where it's a subtle difference. I think now we're cheesemakers who produce their own milk, and I think that's our focus is that, because we only use our own milk for Berkswell, and it all goes into Berkswell. And so, I mean, George is really taking initiative on this, and we're really analysing quite closely how we make our milk and what we use to make that milk in terms of what we feed the sheep, how we manage the sheep. And our focus now is entirely, I mean, things like yields and whatnot are secondary. It's the medium that we are producing with which we make the cheese. That's the most important. Our focus on the farm
is the quality of the milk. The quality
unique to us as well. We do all the hard work of producing the milk. If we can produce that from forage that was produced on the farm rather than sort of bought in feed, then it's to be unique, and the taste is going to be unique to this farm, and that's what we're aiming for, really.
That's so true. It's as soon as you start mixing up farm's milk, the character disappears. It evaporates.
Yeah, right. I mean, the French have a word for it, don't they? And I can't always say it. It's terroir, isn't it? Terroir, whatever you call it.
Yes.
I can't say it very well. I'm sorry. That's the word.
It is, but I get frustrated with the French because they lean quickly into the ground and the weather and the minerals, and they don't put a lot of emphasis on the skill and the history and the what's gone into making the right recipe to make the most of that terroir. Learning. There's a sort of social side of learning to work with your land and make the most of what it offers. It's so important, and that's what you've done for 32 years.
Yeah, I think they're right. It's more of a guided approach. You sort of guide it from like you say the soil and things, but it's a lot of skill in it. But there's things like keeping the microbial life in the milk alive and not pasteurizing and making sure everything's right at every step of the way. But you're guiding it. If you understand,
not forcing anything.
Yeah.
No, I've heard other cheesemakers talk about the fact that you are not just shepherds of sheep, but you're shepherds of bacteria. It's about making them. You can't control them. The best you can do is herd them in the right direction.
Yeah. And you don't want to, with sort of antibacterial wipes and things. It kills off the good bacteria as well as the bad. It's not all about being as clean as possible. But,
no, it's very much not.
Clean but not sterile.
Yeah. Well, I know what you mean. So you went from 35, and I'm right in saying you've now got 350 sheep you're milking.
No, we milk about
650.
Yeah, 12 months, 650, 700. We've actually cut back a little bit. We were sort of 950, and we felt that was too many. And we've changed our breeding a bit. We're introducing the Lacoon breed into our Frieslands, which is the French dairy sheep that they use to produce the milk for Roquefort. And that's giving us a different dimension.
Yeah, that's going back to producing the milk more off forage, really. If we can, they're still a very much dairy breed, but they've got a bit more sort of meat on them, and they don't need quite as much sort of concentrates and bought in feed, and they hopefully will thrive off the pastures that we've got here.
Yeah, the Friesland is the traditional dairy sheep, but they are incredibly high maintenance. In all sorts of ways.
Let's be honest, sheep are stupid. Okay,
they're daft, but they're not stupid, Charlie. I've come to that. I have spent the best years of my life milking sheep, and I've come to the conclusion that they're daft, but they're not. They know which side their bread's buttered on. I can assure you that.
When I was a kid, we farmed sheep for meat, and the only inventive thing about a sheep, as far as I was concerned, is it found new ways to die.
That's a given. Yeah.
It is amazing. So we've got Claire is asking what kind of breed of sheep you have. So you introduced the Lacoon, that you're saying from a sort of a Frisian base. Is that?
We started with Friesland, and we've also over the years introduced a little bit of Pole Dorset, which is now fading out again. But yeah, our current thinking is we're introducing some of the Lacoon genetics, which are French dairy breed, just to make Friesland a little bit more physically robust and just a little bit more versatile.
And Alison's asking, are the sheep hand milked? So I'm assuming no.
No. Otherwise I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you.
That would be out there. No, we use a modern milking parlour. We can milk 40 at once. It's a scale. It works on exactly the same principle as a dairy cow parlour, but the things like the vacuum level and whatnot are different. It's slightly, it is specifically designed for sheep, but it works on exactly the same principle as a cow parlour.
So, your average Holstein Friesian cow is going to produce, a high performer will be 35 litres a day. But so, what are you getting from your sheep?
On average, probably about 2. It can vary quite a lot. Some of them sort of higher yielders could be giving 4 litres a day, and then some will just be plodding on sort of 1.5. But yeah, straight after, a few weeks after lambing, a lot of them will sort of be up to 3.5, 4, and then it just sort of slowly tails off through because of naturally the lactation getting longer and drying off, but also the quality of grass dropping through late summer, and also the daylight lengths as well. As the daylight length shorten, then the sheep naturally wants to dry off.
And so, I mean, I always work on the basis that your litre of milk from a cow is 28 to 30p or something of that order, but it's about £1 for sheep. Is that the sort of wholesale price? What do you?
Yeah, that's roughly the wholesale. I think it varies depending on who's buying it. Anywhere between 90p, £1.20, £1.30. And we won't give our stuff away too a lot. We do sell a bit, and they have to pay for it because it is cheese making milk. It's not commodity. You know, it's not. We don't concentrate. I said earlier, we don't really concentrate on yields. You know, it's solids that we're after. So the yield is secondary, really.
Well, talking of solids, we've gone 20 minutes and we've not really talked about your cheese. So let's get. Your cheese is very, very famous for its shape. It is the original flying saucer. The story goes that you didn't have enough molds, so you went down the local market and bought a bunch of colanders. Is that true?
There's some of that, yeah. If you want to know what the true story is, my mother went on a cheese making course. The first cheese we were made from sheep's milk was made by a neighbouring farmer, Sally, who came and helped us get cheese making going. And then my mother decided she ought to go on a cheese course to support us. So she went to Otley College and she learnt the technique of hand filling colanders and brought that back. And then the two of them sort of put their heads together, and that's how the Berkswell evolved. But yeah, we've stuck with the colanders because they were, at the time, they were quite easy to find. And as we made more cheese, you just went down the local hardware shop and bought more colanders. But then when we needed to replace them, some years afterwards, colanders were becoming a kitchen ornament, and you could get very fancy enamelled metal ones, but you couldn't get a bog standard white plastic colander for love nor money. So I got on the internet and I ended up on the dollar shop online, and I thought, yep, that's just what we want. So I mean, this is amazing. We contacted the dollar shop online and we said, who makes these colanders for you? They said, oh, it's a firm in Illinois called Arrow Moldings, I think. So I contacted them and we imported a couple of thousand of them. And yeah, it was quite an experience, really. You know, we were the sole. We went through the whole process of organising the courier and transport and shipping and everything. And yeah, so if we've got a few. If you ever want a spare colander, you can give us a shout.
Yeah. How far through your 1,000 colanders are
oh, we've got quite a long way through them because they don't. They have a limited life. They get quite a lot of stick and they split or they crack or whatever, and so we chuck them out and get another one.
But they clean well, and
yeah, they do. Yeah.
They clean. So run through how you make it. So how it's a rennet set, obviously. How long you is it a high schooled, low schooled? What is your technique?
You, George. Okay. George has been spending some time in the dairy recently, so I thought you might know. Well, I don't want to give too much away. Right, but certain things are sacred. But yeah, it's what I say to people. It's a pretty basic, a routine make, in the sense of our temperatures are nothing that different. At times, we use a combination of titratable acidity and time lapse and touchy feely as well. It is 100% handmade. There is not one piece of machinery involved. Not one button is pressed to activate anything on any of the vats. It's all totally handmade. It's hand cut with carts.
Do you use a style recipe where you get the curd out on the table and mill it or anything like that? So, or do you leave it under the whey and let you do? So it's a European. It's what we at the Academy call it acidify in mold, not acidify in vat.
Yeah. When we're ready to mold, just open the tap, let the whey start to drain out, and then we're molding as it's draining out. And by the end, the whey's gone. Yeah,
the curd's left in the whey. The curd is at molding. The curd is taken from the vat into the mold. Yeah. So it's just a very basic. There's nothing.
And you're salting through wash.
Pardon?
How are you salting it?
Dry salt.
Dry salt on the outside. Yeah. So that is kind of an interesting sort of anglicization of a French recipe, really, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, I suppose. It's also
not inspired. It's very much trial and error.
Yeah.
Wasn't it, when you started, it's not like they didn't take a recipe from France and sort of based it on that. Really,
No.
it was really sort of we've got this milk.
Yeah, I remember when Sally made the very first cheese. She got some college notes out, and the first recipe she actually read to was a Caerphilly recipe. It doesn't bear any resemblance to a Caerphilly, but that was the spark that that's how she got going. But yeah, as George said, as I said earlier in the conversation, and I think back to the Berkswell in the early 90s, it doesn't really resemble the Berkswell we make now. It has evolved. We've tried brining, we've tried this, we've tried that, we've tried double dipping back into the whey, and we just stay with what we're doing, And I think it's more focusing on the attention to detail. It is so easy to get it wrong.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not on the ball constantly all the time. It's quite unforgiving in that sense. There's very little room for maneuver.
We were saying earlier, you can when we're tasting the cheeses, even a couple of months down the line, if there's a batch we're not quite happy with, we'll look for the notes. And Julie, our cheesemaker, oh yeah, we were really stressed that day, or we were a bit short, and it's like
it's a 100% reflection of that day.
Yeah,
in all its different variations, because again, and it is. I keep banging on about it, and it sounds big, but it is because it is literally handmade.
Mm-hmm.
From everything, from the timing of when the starter's added, when the rennet's added, everything's added. Nothing's automated. It's all on the decision of the day. I mean, we've got 3 ladies in the cheese room. They can all make, and so they share the making around. Julie's in charge, very much so, and it is attention to detail, and I think it's also having green fingers. I don't think everybody can be a cheesemaker. I think it's a real skill that you can either develop that skill, you can't.
We are hugely lucky. We've got 3 people in the dairy, and they're
fantastic.
They're just they
are absolute legends. They really are. Yeah.
And you need people like that when it's so handmade. You need that attention to detail,
that continuity, that love, that kind of care.
Yeah, exactly. That's it. Yeah,
it is. Yeah.
And what about the next step? Because one of the, if you look at sheep's milk cheeses across Europe and all that kind of thing, it is a cheese that changes radically from the moment you've made it to what if you keep it for a year or however long you keep it. It's a cheese milk starts off relatively white, relatively soft, and it develops little holes. It gets older, the color changes, the profile, the flavor profile. What's your favorite age for your cheese?
I would say that the age and also the time of year. My favorite cheeses, I would say, probably are made around the end of the midwinter. I think some of that is because the milk is a very consistent product. Then the sheep are indoors. Their environment is the same every day. Their diet's the same every day. And I think we get a much more consistent period in our production. And 5 to 6 months, I would say. I mean, we taste. We do a taste. Julie does a 4-week tasting, and that is really just to try and determine texture. 4 weeks, there's very little flavour. If there is flavour development at 4 weeks, then it's going to blow your socks off at 6 months old. But we're looking for texture really, because we do. If we have a problem, it's generally with the texture becoming a little bit dry. So we can identify at quite an early stage anything we think might just start to dry a bit sooner, and we can manage that accordingly. But once it goes above 6, probably 8 months, it starts to change, and it becomes very much like a Parmesan. And we've got a lot of customers who really enjoy it at that age, and grate and shave with it. Use it in cooking rather than a cheese board cheese. And then we had some. We took to over a year old. We gave it a different name, and that was a really nice cheese. Quite dry, and different to Berkswell, but still a very clean. Very clean
really
cheese.
Nice, grated.
Grated. It was fantastic.
Yeah. That's a sort of in the Manchego style, that Viejo, as they say. It becomes almost too dense a flavor to eat in a cheese board style.
Yeah.
It becomes a almost like a garnish for tapas and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's too dry. It doesn't lend itself to. Yeah, it's a bit chewy as well. You know, it doesn't lend itself to cheese board cheese once it gets very old.
Okay, we've got a techie question coming from Jonathan Tesh. Why do you choose to coat the cheese rather than cloth wrap or allow a natural rind?
Right. Okay. We started using what's generally known as plastic coat quite early on when we were having trouble with the cheeses cracking when they were very young. They spend about 5 days in the make room, and then they come out of the make room, and we were finding, I guess it was lack of experience or whatever, we were finding they were cracking quite seriously, and we didn't quite know what to do. And we're quite close to Fowler's of Earlswood, the Fowler's cheesemakers. David was incredibly helpful to us in our early days. He was literally a walking encyclopedia of cheesemaking, and he suggested that we use a product called plastic coat, which just put a very thin film over it, and it just helps the cheese. It slows the drying process of the rind net quite a lot. It's relatively easy to apply. It's very it doesn't prevent the rind forming. We have then tried not doing it with mixed success, but quite a few cheeses do use it.
Well, we were talking to Tim Jones a couple of weeks ago.
I was going to mention that the previous gentleman uses it. Yeah. I've not really got an opinion on it one way or another. It's a good insurance for us. Our EHO quite likes it because it's protecting the product. You know, the purists will say, "Oh, it's awful stuff. You shouldn't be using that."
There are no purists on this channel. There is only good cheese. I think it's the cheesemakers' license to do what the hell they like. Frankly,
well, yeah, it works for us, and if it ain't broke, don't fix it. As far as I can see.
You still get amazing sort of diverse rinds on the cheese as it matures after it's been painted.
Yeah, we do get some great molds forming on it.
Yeah, you do, and it's got some of those nice, distinctive, rusty colours as well. Which I always rather like. I do agree with you, and I'm sure Jonathan's the same. You have so many challenges as a cheesemaker. You've got to pick your battles in some respects, and you've got to be able to do it in a way that's economically competitive and delivers the flavor profile you want. And for some people that means pasteurization. For other people that means using different milks. So I strongly think that the cheesemaker finds their way, and you clearly have. I mean, you've got trophies like very few others.
Hang on, wrong hand. Oh, which way? That way. There are.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. It is cheesemakers and farmers that are making cheese. It's very unique to where they are, what milk they can get, and it's never really look at someone as why are you doing that? If that's what they need to do to produce the best cheese they can, that's what they do.
And one of the questions being asked is, would you make a blue cheese? We did touch on this before we started talking on the show. You just make the one cheese. You've considered other things, but at the end of the day, you come back to this one, Berkswell, every single time.
Yeah. It's a credit to like my dad and the cheesemakers. Look, when they started, to not need to try different cheese. All the milk was going into Berkswell because it was popular and people liked it, and they were sort of perfecting the Berkswell. And you sort of think, if we can perfect Berkswell, why try other cheeses?
Yeah. We did dabble with a few soft cheeses, but we found we were taking our eye off the ball a little bit. You mentioned blue. Berkswell does get some blue in it now and again. Some people don't mind it. I mean, we get some people call it lightning strikes, which I quite like.
It's nice phrase.
We do get complaints from wholesalers, which sometimes it's a bit frustrating when it's just a little speck of blue in the corner. But it happens, you know, and sometimes we'll get a bit of a run of it. And we've over the years, every time it happens, we analyse why we think it's happened, and we can probably work out what has gone wrong. I mean, going right back many years ago, I don't recall when blue tongue virus was around. We vaccinated all our ewes against blue tongue because that was we were almost being ordered to by DEFRA, really. And the cheese was rubbish for the last 2 weeks after the vaccination for blue tongue. Yeah, all sorts of things can affect it. You know, you have to be very careful, very, very careful in the winter with the silage we feed. It's good quality, very good. It has to be very good quality. I mean, the sheep, not because of the sheep eating much of them, and they all pick through, but you just don't want any. You don't want any butyric.
No,
not at all. You know.
No, otherwise you're going to get blowing and all sorts of weird stuff.
Absolutely. Yeah.
We have actually been talking for 35 minutes now, which is 6 minutes, which is 6 minutes over my rule. So obviously this conversation has value. I hope people have very much enjoyed hearing what you're talking about. You've told the story of 32 years of a lot of hard work, a lot of improvements, a lot of focus, and that's made Berkswell what it is today. I mean, you guys have done a great job and deserve a lot of credit.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And we will continue.
Yeah, next 5 years.
We have a healthy overdraft, so we've got to keep going.
The farmer's curse. He can never give up. He can never give up.
Yeah. Okay, Charlie. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, and thank you all the people who've been watching. And if there's one takeaway here is buy more Berkswell. Is that the fair comment?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yes. Yeah. That goes as a given.
Thank you very much, Stephen and George.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Thank you, Charlie. Thank you.